Okay. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. And um, today is our 15th episode on leading the change. And we are going to talk about the art and science of digital and sustainable change. We have the pleasure of hosting another wonderful guest, Ali Kursun, managing partner at Spark Chief and Co., a boutique management consulting firm based in Geneva. With over 20 years of experience in the management consulting industry, Ali has been instrumental in steering organizations towards effective strategic transformations and workforce decision to fuel growth. His expertise spans a diverse range of areas, including leading strategic planning, driving transformational change initiatives, and fostering innovation. As a ProSci certified change management practitioner, Ali brings a wealth of knowledge in navigating complex organizational shifts with finesse. He has a remarkable track record of initiating and nurturing new businesses, as well as assembling and managing high performing teams on both regional and global scales. Ali's distinguished career trajectory includes prominent roles at Mercer, where we got to know each other, drglobe.com, and Corporate Resources Group, where he held global business leadership positions, shaping the landscape of consulting and corporate strategies. Having worked extensively in Europe, Asia, and the United States, Ali leverages his global perspective to deliver insightful consulting services. This expertise also makes him a popular speaker at international conferences, forums, and workshops. Recognized as a thought leader in organizational transformation, change management, and people strategy, Ali has authored 7 influential management books and penned over 100 articles exploring on critical topics such as leadership, change, and workforce management. His consulting focus encompasses a broad spectrum ranging from business and digital transformation to workforce strategy and planning. Ali's industry expertise extends healthcare, chemicals, supply chain and logistics, high tech, financial services, and consumer goods sectors, where he has designed and implemented cutting edge management solutions. Ali profounds insights coupled with his unwavering commitment to driving excellence, continue to propel his clients towards new levels of success and sustainability. Hans Peter?
Wow, thank you, Catherine. That's really an impressive bio. So congratulations and welcome. Thank you for joining us today, Ali.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Good. Just before we go in, a small little reminder for people that join us live. So we are posing some questions to Ali, and we've reserved enough time. So if you have questions, just put it in the LinkedIn comments, and we will take them up at the end. Okay, let's start, Ali. Let's start with, I would say, the basics. So I know that you are a thought leader in organizational transformation, change management, and people strategy, as we just have heard. And you really have written lots of books and explored critical topics like leadership change and workforce management. So can you share with us why digital transformation? What's the role of change management, leadership, and workforce empowerment, workforce management?
Yeah, sure, Hans Peter. Thanks a lot. I think really when I work with clients, they tend to ask us like very specific things about they want to do a workforce planning or they want to do digital transformation, or in some cases, how do we establish a sustainability program and things like that. But the reality is that everything's all combined. I mean, everything goes together. So the combination of transformation, change management, and at the same time organizational change is a very critical factor for achieving anything that you want to achieve in your organization from a strategic perspective. So I mean, I'm very lucky to work with very smart and also committed and engaging leaders through our network of clients. And I think that's the part which I get excited, because they look at things in a more holistic manner. So even on transformation, let's take for example the digital transformation. I mean, some companies think that digital transformation happens only with the drive of the IT department, but unfortunately, that's not the reality. You have to involve others into the process. It involves organizational change. It involves cultural change. So that's I would say, the sweet spot of doing great work. And I'm very excited when I work with companies who understand that, and they really put the resources to make it happen.
Excellent. Wonderful. So it is, I love when you said this holistic view, because digital transformation, it's more about the transformation itself than the digital. And this leads me to another question. What are the first steps that clients need to think about when to align digital transformation with sustainability goals? How does it work?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Catherine. But I would say, even before we think about alignment between digital transformation and sustainability goals, I think we have to make it sure that everything is driven by business strategy. So first of all, there should be alignment with the business strategy. I've been in projects, for example, I mean, either digital transformation. I can give you examples. It is not aligned with business strategy. So what happens is that people start allocating resources in the wrong way, and that obviously then leads to wasted resources in terms of either financially or even manpower. And then we when we come in, we say, oh, wait a second. I mean, what we're trying to do here is no different than what we're trying to execute on your business strategy. Is that aligned with your digital transformation? Is your business strategy aligned with your sustainability program, if you will? I think the first step is to make it sure, therefore, is that your digital transformation or sustainability program should be aligned with your business strategy. I have seen companies, and I do work with companies, their strategy, the digital transformation, or their digital strategy and sustainability is at the core of their strategy statement. And when you have that clearly defined, then it makes it much easier. So I would say, really check first if your digital transformation and sustainability program are aligned with your business strategy. So it has to be driven by that. And the second thing I would say, you need to have a very good view, to the best of your knowledge, of the future before you embark on any of those transformations, either either digital transformation or any sustainability goals that you're trying to achieve. Have a really good understanding. Do your homework. Obviously, in today's world, it's becoming more complicated to predict the future. I mean, it's typically strategic planning, where like 5 years down the road, but now 3 to 5 years, even 3 years even seems to be long. But I think we can do a good job on understanding the future. And if we understand the future, then we can really make it sure that whatever we want to achieve in the future is also aligned with our digital transformation strategy and also sustainability strategy. So that's the second component, I would say. And the last one, I would say, is about inclusivity. I mean, you have to be inclusive when you embark on these things. Typically, digital transformation projects are driven by IT departments, but you need to include other functions. You need to include the business into this formula at the same time. So be inclusive, include everyone from the beginning, and to make sure that you look at the process side, you look at the people side, and you look also at the cultural side of change when you embark on digital transformation or sustainable programs.
Okay. Okay, so if I understood you correctly, so I noted down 3 things you said. So it really starts out with the importance of aligning your digital strategy, your sustainability strategy with your business strategy. So don't have that siloed approach, but really make it to the core. I think you said that was the first. Second, you said have a vision. You cannot predict the future, but you need some kind of vision that you then of course share within your company. And by that, include people. You need inclusive processes. You need include culture. I think if we on the topic of strategic plans or strategic integration, as you just started out, can you share with us how you would say, how can leaders incorporate change management into the strategic plan for successful transformations as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one common thing I see quite often and frequently in the works we do is that leaders, they don't tend to include change experts right from the beginning when they start any kind of strategic planning. I think that's the first thing that they have to do. I would highly recommend it. And when I go in a project and I see that happening, I say, wait a second, we have to be here from the beginning. And the reason is that a lot of context happens in these leadership meetings, right? So typically you might have maybe 10, 15 leaders, depending on the size of your organization. They try to articulate their strategy. They try to articulate what they want to achieve. And there's a lot of contextual discussions ongoing there. And if you miss that from the beginning, that kind of brings a bit of a disconnect with the teams who will execute that strategy afterwards. So I think try to include the change experts right from the beginning of any plan that you're embarking on. And the second thing I see quite important actually is that leaders, they don't tend to think about who's going to be impacted really. What are the stakeholders? What are the key stakeholders? So they don't do a good job on defining these stakeholders. What are we actually going to impact in terms of specific key stakeholders? Are there going to be any resistance with it, from a specific stakeholder, or how are we going to communicate to these people? When it comes to stakeholder mapping, for example, they tend to have one type of stakeholder. They think that everyone in our organization receives the same communication. But actually, you need to build these communication key messages according to each stakeholder. So it's very important to understand the stakeholders that you're dealing with. And then I think another area which is very important in any strategic planning or any transformation is that make it sure that the transformation is owned by the business units. It's owned by the functions that are impacted. It's not just a specific group that you get together as a transformation program lead or a group or team, but it's owned by the people who are really working on the ground with the people, with the customers, and they are going to be the ones who are going to change and transform the organization. It's not a small group of people who are managing the program. So making sure that the ownership resides with the businesses. And that's all. I think in a nutshell, I would say these are the most important ones.
I love that when you said that the change is owned by the businesses, because I mean it's their it's their daily bread, right? And also it is also the complexity of stakeholders that we get an overview who will really be involved and who shall we involve, because it can bring additional value. But I think that. And this leads me to another question. The change, I mean, include change people who drive changes, who know how to deal with changes. And we know exactly how these discussions start, at a board, you have some ideas, you you exchange. And do you think that that leaders are underestimating the work that it needs to drive change? This would be my first part of the question, to follow up on what you said, and which leads me to another question. Which are the pitfalls, the common pitfalls when implementing change? But I would like to drive it now towards sustainability initiatives, because we see it too often that sustainability changes is almost like a to-do list, that we can say, okay, we are from a regulatory perspective, boom, 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 this is good. And there we have some problems. Can you tell us what sustainability initiatives can also drive or bring also to the business?
Right. No, I absolutely. Thank you for that question. I think to address the first question you have,
Mhm.
you know, if you look at transformation programs, or typically, I mean, obviously there will be people on the change side, change experts in any typical transformation program, but it is probably the least spent area. I mean, you might have maybe very few people, but leaders tend to underestimate the amount of resources needed for the change component of transformation. So they will really heavily go on the, either it's technology side or any operational side, manufacturing side, whatever it is. So they will put their, dollars into that in terms of transformation, because, this is more concrete, it's more tangible. So they like to invest on things like that. But the change side of transformation is probably, I mean, one of the most important, because if you don't have the organization ready for that transformation, if you didn't do your due diligence, if you will, and if you did in your assessments to understand, what state the organization is, you're going to fail. So it's the least spent area, change management, but at least at the same time is one of the most important. So I think for your question, first question, I would say that. The second question you have in terms of sustainability and the pitfalls of sustainability, I think I experience and I observe a lot, when it comes to sustainability. I mean, there are programs that organizations will build, but what I called, I mean, I don't want to use very cliche words, but I think leadership support is so important in these type of initiatives. But what happens typically, the leadership will be there at the beginning, but then after kind of fades away, their presence, if you will. So and that would be a big pitfall for any program, including obviously the sustainability initiatives. So my recommendation would be, if your sustainability program is driven by your business strategy, so you need to be in front of that strategy. So you need to be present. You need to lead by example. You need to communicate. And this should not be happening in the phase one of that program. It should be happening across the program until, obviously, so you're talking about sustainability. It should never end. I mean, it's an ongoing program, but you have to be present there. So really, it's one of the pitfalls of this that, leaders do. I mean, they just get engaged in the beginning, then they lose power and it fades away, and then people will realize that. And the second pitfall, I would say, is about really culture, because again, we talked in the beginning about how important it is to have the strategy-driven transformation or strategy-driven sustainability programs. I mean, if you don't have that link, obviously you're not going to look at your organization as well from a cultural perspective. So if you can do whatever policies that you bring, whatever practices that you bring, whatever new rules or ways of working that you introduce, if you don't have the right culture for sustainability, then you're not going to achieve anything. I mean, obviously you'll achieve something, but it's not going to be at par level that you would really you get the most out of it. So I think these are the two things. And also linked to maybe again to strategy. Obviously, it has to be a priority, right? It has to be linked to any program around sustainability. It shouldn't be in silo. It should be prioritized. And I think if you do those things as well, and maybe the fourth thing is about mostly about awareness. I would say communications. It's not how you communicate your sustainability program or initiative. It's to understand how people perceive these initiatives, right? So you need to make it sure that it resonates with people. It resonates with what they think. It resonates with their capability. And also it resonates how they can contribute to this program. I mean, I think it's important to communicate as well.
Yeah.
Great. So I hope to have understood you correctly. So on the pitfalls, I noted you said, okay, there could be three, which is leadership support is important, but be careful that it doesn't fade away.
Yep.
So continuous leadership leadership support really is one of the things. And be present and communicate. That was the first. Second, you said, of course, you need that, but more importantly, also be aware of your culture. You need the right culture to nurture sustainability. So I think in terms of sustainability, and of course, I think that's self-speaking. If it's not a priority in the leadership in the boardroom, then it's very difficult. I think that's really good. And you also talked about communication, so that leads me a bit to my to our next question. And then, because one of the things is also any transformation that a company is doing, of course, they hope that it makes impact. And for me, impact is one thing. And there is a saying, if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. So can you share with us what would you recommend executives? How should they really measure the impact they make?
Yep.
And how should they then, you talked about communication, but how should they best communicate the impact to their stakeholders?
Yep. Absolutely. I think really it's not very complicated. It should be, first of all, it should be concrete. Anything that you measure should be concrete. So what I mean by that is, it should be something that people understand what you're tracking in terms of measurement. And it should be concrete in a sense that you can really refer to these things as gains or efficiencies or any type of more quantifiable, I must say, right at the beginning, so that people can relate. What are we actually going to achieve by these things? Like, what will be the exact impact of that, either on an organizational level or operational level or whatever that you're trying to measure actually. And on the other side, I think you have to make it sure that you don't have like 10,000 metrics that you're measuring. You need to focus on maybe 3 to 5, I would say. I mean, I wouldn't go to 10. The most important things that are going to impact our organization from measuring, whatever we're trying to do, so that we can communicate this easier, because it's less is more. And the more you focus, the more you're kind of really going to the most critical components of what you're trying to achieve. And I would say the third element would be that you can track those things. I've seen over and over again companies trying to measure things that are not concrete, not only not concrete, and they're trying to kind of like have discussions on how to measure it and every month. I mean, this should not be the case. I mean, from the beginning, you realize you define concrete examples, concrete measures, metrics, if you will, and you create a dashboard of that you can do that on an ongoing basis, so that you can report back on your progress. Otherwise, any kind of communication that you would do will not resonate with people, because people don't understand what you're trying to say. I mean, very vague terms or metrics will not work. And another thing I think it's important to talk about is really about coming back to the stakeholders, because when you measure something, people need to understand also how they contribute to that to the success of that metric, if you will. So if you did a good job on mapping your stakeholders, you have to also try to fine-tune those messages based on these stakeholders. So if you're trying to measure a sustainability efficiency or something like that, you have to make it sure that the way the leadership will receive that communication will not be the same thing as the people in your factory plant or whatever that is. So you have to really align those things together. So be concrete as much as possible. Try to make sure that you can actually measure those things. Literally, you can measure those things. It's not like we think we can. You can do that, and then you can really do it on an ongoing basis, so that we don't have to have arguments about if this metric is good or not, or I don't believe in this data set because blah blah blah. So I think that's important. And then make it sure that whenever you're communicating these, you talk to the right audiences in the right way.
I like that, the transparency, and also to allow. You were talking earlier about inclusivity. It is about bringing everyone on board and making sure that everyone goes into the same direction, right?
Yeah.
And so um, we have now metrics, okay? And I mean, we are in a transformation journey. And how can we make sure that leaders foster, on one side, a culture of, I mean, delivering results towards sustainability for long-term success, but also to foster innovation? How can we balance that? Because innovation is something which is dynamic.
Mhm.
And when you deliver on metrics, you try to put the emphasis more on the efficiency of your actions. How can you balance that?
Yeah. I think really when it comes to innovation and sustainability, it has to be embedded in the organization. So it has to be inclusive. I mean, for the first thing to say, because, and what I mean by that is actually, typically you will have these innovation team or innovate or sustainability team who are running these programs, right? So, or group of people getting together, driving that in an organization. I'm not a believer of that type of a structure. I think you have to spread it all across the organization. I can give you an example. I mean, when I was working for a consulting firm, we used to work with a Finnish company. They employed like 50,000 or 60,000 people. And there was a conversation about innovation. And we said, what do you have an innovation program? And they said, no, we don't have an innovation program. I said, okay, what do you do about innovation? And the VP of HR told me, well, we don't have an innovation program, but what we do have is a goal setting in everybody's kind of really performance reviews, that everybody has to come up with one idea a year. So think about it. I mean, it's like you were talking about 50,000 ideas to come up every year. That's, I think, more inclusive than just having a group of people focusing on innovation. And the second side of innovation is that innovation happens in places that you don't expect. So it's not only about technology innovation. It's not about production or product innovation or service innovation. Innovation might also happen in your operations and in your way of working. So you need to make sure that everyone is contributing to innovation, not only a number of people, but everyone. So democratize that innovation processes, I think, works better, and it's more sustainable in the long run, because it's engaging at the same time, right? So people get more engaged when you ask them to contribute. So don't make it a group activity. And I think that's how you can foster the culture of innovation across the organization, but not specific to any teams, I would say.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I also recently read about a company, it wasn't Finnish, and they also are convinced that they said, look, why we need to ask people on the ground, day in, day out their work, they can tell us what should be innovated, how should we do it. And so I think this inclusiveness, this engaging, it's a very good example. I think that's really good. Hey, if I look at the time, just one last question. We talked about early on leadership support, and make sure that it doesn't fall away, and you said as leaders you have to be present. Is there anything else that you could share on how can executives maintain and reinforce this transformation efforts next to being present? Is there anything else that you can share on that, please?
Yeah, in the works that we do, we really focus on reinforcement as part of the change initiatives or transformation. Reinforcement has a different meaning to different people, but what I mean by reinforcement is try to kind of convey success stories that convinces others to get engaged in your program. Sometimes it doesn't work one way, or top-down communication. So when you have success stories your peers have experienced, or your customers might experience as well. So if people see that actually they can get something out of it, that there is success happening, that reinforces the idea of like, okay, this program is good, it's working, so I'm going to get engaged, I'm going to try to contribute on that one. So I think that's the first one I would say, and it works really well. I mean, I think people like to hear things from peers than from top all the time. So, you know, when you have an experience story or a success story, it resonates well with people. It's more convincing, if you will, because it's really the real concrete examples of how this transformation or whatever this sustainability program you're embarking. And the second thing I would say, you know, really make it sure that you continuously improve your capabilities, because I think it's important that the transformations or programs in general, it's not only one-time event, it's an ongoing event. So you need to make sure that we're ready for the next transformation, even before you don't know that you're going to have a transformation. So make sure that capabilities are growing and developing in the organization, in your teams on an ongoing basis. I think that's what I would say. And then we didn't talk too much about it from a reinforcement perspective, but I'm assuming that's you do that by default. So whatever you come up with in your transformation, make it sure that these processes are sustainable, that these policies that you're deploying are sustainable. I mean, we know that we will change them, but at least, you know, whenever you come up with a new process, reflect back, you think, can I do this in the long run, you know, or do I have to change completely? So obviously you will tweak them on an ongoing basis, but if you have something more sustainable from a process perspective, you'll gain more of it in the long run. I think those are the three things which will reinforce your transformation. Obviously there are many other things, but I would say these are the top three.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think we come to the end of our time. I would say, Hans-Peter, do you want to end it today?
Yeah, very good. Unfortunately, time is up. So I think this 30 minutes, or now even 31 minutes, were just flying by. Ali, thank you very much. Really, I think it was so insightful, and the wealth that you share, and you probably underestimate what you all know, but I think it's so good to have you here to share with us some of your insights, some experiences. So thank you very much. And to the audience, probably if you have more questions, type it in LinkedIn, and then I'm sure Ali and we link you to Ali, and then you can get your answers.
Absolutely.
So for that, thank you very much. One note at the end, we are back next month in June. So watch out. There is another interesting guest that we have. And for now, I wish you all a great end of the day and a great weekend. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye.
We stay here online. Bye-bye.